All right, we're live. Alessandra, how are you doing?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
Good, 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 good. It's nice to get a chance to chat here. We've been chatting already before we started recording for a bit. Um,
Yes.
but where to start? You are based in Switzerland. We were talking about that, but you're Italian,
Yes.
and you do. Could you talk a little bit about what you do in terms of work and things like that?
Yes, I have a bunch of things going on. I have my own consulting. I started a few years ago and I do product strategy for the tech vertical. So
Mhm.
basically, I help companies trying, to design and build products that are of high impact, so they
Mhm.
generate recurring business and revenue. And that's, let's say, the main focus I have.
Can you share about what some of those companies are that you work for, or is it all
I mean, I'm
NDA?
not going to share the names. I'm very protective
Okay.
somehow.
No, I
Like, I feel like because I tend to build relationships, but it's mainly startups,
okay.
so I never planned to work for startups. I have a career in tech, so I worked for very long in companies.
Yeah.
And the last 6, 7 years as a product manager. And then
Okay.
I focused more and more on strategy. So when I left, I wanted to continue doing that because I really, really, really enjoyed it. But I was just planning to work for other companies, maybe SMEs, so small and medium companies. But then I started getting more and more involved with startups because startups are actually the ones that need the most. So it turned out they really needed help with positioning their product in the market, understanding better their product, their audience. And right now, this is basically what I do most of the time. So I work with startups. I started mentoring. So I mentor in a bunch of accelerators, one of which is Mass Challenge, which is this huge international accelerator. And
Mm.
yeah, I work more and more with startups.
Hmm. That's cool.
Yeah.
I saw your Tech in the Loop. Is that the name of your Tilt, your
Yes,
newsletter?
my
Yeah.
newsletter. Yeah, that's another thing that was born from the relationship I started building with startups. Um, well, there is a whole story behind Tech in the Loop. That is actually a framework that I
Hmm.
built.
Hmm.
I was doing research. I felt like I needed a framework to sort of help myself when I was working. So,
Hmm.
like, I focus on product strategy with human centricity. So, I'm a strong believer that because we have so much tech going on out
Hmm.
there and there is so much competition, either we are able to build tech that is really supporting a need, a desire, or what is
Hmm.
going to happen is that people that look for a product might end up on our product, but if we don't understand them, if we don't give them what we need, they simply move on because there'll be somebody else that is going to do it. So when I started working in tech, I studied computer engineering. The first year I was going to a lab to do my homework. A lab
Hmm.
where, I let you imagine that computers, it's actually more than 20 years, but it's better if I don't think about it.
Nice.
And the computers were awful.
You have a background as a developer? Is that what
Yeah, that's
you?
how I started. Actually,
Okay.
I'm a little bit of a mix. I studied computer engineering and then I moved on and I did a PhD in systems and computer engineering. And I
Okay.
started
Cool.
as a researcher, actually. I started working for IBM.
Yeah.
There is a research lab here in Zurich. That's how I ended up in Zurich.
Okay.
And this lab here is very, very famous because they won the Nobel Prize. There is a guy that won the Nobel Prize in physics that works for this
Oh
lab,
wow.
so it's super, super famous. And that's how I started as a researcher. I worked as a researcher for some time. Then I felt like it wasn't enough. I wanted to try more. I wanted to,
Like you wanted to do more things hands-on.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Research is beautiful, is challenging. You can be creative. Indeed, I went back to research in the end. That's basically what I'm doing right now. But the outcome...
As a consultant, like that's sort of what you do as a consultant, you mean?
No, it's also sort of what I do with Tilt. As a consultant as well, but it's a different type of research. It's more like the work that I do with the university. That's the other part that is part of my work today. So, but the thing with research is that not always, but most of the time, the outcome of your work is going to be a paper that will be published, right? In rare cases, it becomes a product. It becomes something tangible. And I felt like I wanted to explore and research wasn't giving me that opportunity. So I thought I would move on, and this is when I started working as a software developer. I first worked for a company that was building solar panels. An amazing experience because I got to learn so much about like renewable energy, and this was more than 10 years ago already. Cool. Yeah, it was really interesting. I really got to see how the machine builds the layer, and then does the tracks they were so proud that they taught me every little detail, even though then, I was never going to do the chemical parts of the panel, but still we wanted all the people working for them to know like the technology.
To understand the whole process.
Yes.
That's so cool.
And then I continue working as a software developer, and then I started like moving up as a project manager, product manager. I started working with the European Commission in their projects as activity leader, and these were the years where I traveled like crazy, and I did a number of interesting projects with so many different technologies. In IBM, I was doing a network. I was working on switches and routers. I mean, my PhD was on the internet, so I was really on the cables. So I was working with the packets that were going everywhere, and I was doing like algorithms to avoid congestion. So when the packets, so cool. It was kind of cool. For me, it was like Tetris, it was like a game. You have to fit everything perfectly to avoid to lose the packets. So I took it as a game. And it was a lot of fun. I think it was a good choice.
I was talking to my kid. By the way, I interrupt a lot, so you interrupt me. I interrupt.
Let's interrupt each other. It works well.
I find that if I don't interrupt, I get lost and I forget. And then it's a mess. But my daughter, my kids are 12, 6, and 3. And the other day, I said something, and I said it's like Tetris, and they said, "What's that?" Oh my gosh, we gotta play Tetris.
My God.
I know, isn't that weird? I still haven't played with them, which is horrible, but I gotta do that.
Amazing, how things change. Like you mentioned something, you expect everybody to know what that is, and no, your kids don't.
It is.
Indeed.
It is crazy. But so you're building the algorithms for the packet.
Yeah, traffic, exactly. So that was a lot of fun. But then I moved on to network performances. So I went, if you want, like a step higher in the network, like in the TCP/IP stack, right? Yeah. And then I did cybersecurity, identity management. I worked a lot with identity management tools, and that was when I started doing also product management. When I started getting into cybersecurity, this is when I started working with products. And the last years before I decided I wanted to work by myself, I was more focusing on emerging technologies, next generation internet, artificial intelligence, and things like that. So it was a lot of fun. I surely never got bored in my career. When I decided to stop, it was because I was really traveling too much. When you get involved with the European Commission, that's what happens. I mean, well, probably in Corona, it didn't happen anymore, right? But before Corona, you were almost forced. So it became too much for me at some point. So I was like,
Gotcha.
okay, let me stop. And
Lay
back to
low a little bit.
Tilt, because we didn't talk
Yes.
about it. So
Yeah.
I was working on this framework for myself, and I ended up doing research on human-centered artificial intelligence, and things like that. And then I came up with Tech in the Loop, and
Because like one of the AI models is the human in the loop, where you
exactly, it
have
comes from
an
there.
AI model, but there's a
Yeah,
human that is there to kind of approve things or
train.
kind of train, and so you flip that analogy, you kind of
Exactly.
inverted. Yeah.
Exactly, because that's what I think, right? I think the machine should make us better. So what happens in human in the loop is that humans provide inputs to help the machine learn better.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
basically, we are the support.
Yes.
And I flipped it
We're like
around.
we're like a cog in the AI loop.
Exactly. So I flipped that around because it should actually be tech supporting us. So I started from that concept, and I started working on all the steps of the product strategy on how to make each step human-centered. So it shouldn't be about the product, it should
Yeah.
be about the people.
Yeah. What would be an example of a product or some kind of a workflow, some kind of a loop where the human the tech where the tech is not functioning to serve people's needs, and that you change the what's an example, like what's a real world example of this?
So there are like a bunch of companies that are strongly focused on their customers. Maybe they don't really do it like in the way I thought, tech in the loop, but their idea is very close to mine. So one is Amazon. Jeff Bezos was and he is still obsessed with customers.
Obsessively focused on the customer. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, totally. So he wasn't maybe thinking in terms of human centricity the way maybe we explore it today, but I can tell you that he was probably, one of the most obsessed with the concept. I mean, there is this story going around, which I know from somebody that works a lot with Amazon, that in their meetings they have like one empty chair. And that is the chair of the customer. And whenever
Hmm.
they are about to take a decision, they stop and they ask themselves, is the customer going to like this? Is the customer
Hmm.
going to want this? And if
Hmm.
they cannot clearly answer yes, they work more to turn that around and make it super appealing for
Yeah.
the user.
Yeah.
Um, and there are a number of, for example, when building a product, there is always this question: okay, what is the value proposition? What is the added value, or
Hmm.
what is the vision for this product? And there are some examples that are human-centered of very successful products. So Henry Ford, for example.
Hmm.
His vision was to build, a car for the masses. So he wanted to build a product that was affordable and that everyone could enjoy.
Hmm. Hmm.
So till then, cars were really expensive and only few selected people could enjoy it. And he wanted to turn that around. And that is a human-centered approach. So he wanted to build a product that was good for everyone. That wasn't just solving a problem, but was putting everyone in the same position so that everybody can have it.
Right. Right. That makes
And,
sense.
also Microsoft. So the first vision was to bring every computers in everybody's home or on
Right.
everybody's desk.
Right.
That's also an example of
Yeah.
humans. And I find that every time a product is really focused on the end user,
Yeah.
it, it might be a coincidence, but it turns to be a little bit more successful than others.
Yeah. Yeah. I think sometimes there's a dynamic in business where, um, the you can it can be tempting to focus not on the customer but other stakeholders. For example, in a retail environment, you got the manufacturer, you've got the distributor,
Yeah.
the wholesaler, and the customer, right? And then the distributor can say, hey, we want to have these nice healthy profit margins because that makes us happy, and the customer is paying more than they need to, and then you can optimize for that party. Whereas I think what like Jeff Bezos did is he was like, that's where that obsessive focus on the customer came in, where he's like, we're going to drive our margins down to zero. Screw what the stockholders might think short term, kind of screw everything else. Like, the only thing that matters is the customer.
Yeah, I mean, in the end, especially in a business like retailers, you have so many competitive forces, if we want to call it, coming in. Yeah. That you really need to find a good balance. I think the object, should always be to give the customers what the customer wants, right? And then balance all the rest, because there are, and this comes, from the work that I do at the university. I teach in a university here in Zurich, and it's a business school. So now I'm bringing, the tech and all the strategy and the things that I do together. And this is the exercise that we do, so how do we balance competitors? How do we balance suppliers? How do we balance new market entrants to still get to the because the customer in the end can turn in a competitor because the customer can leave, right? So I don't know, if the customer finds a product that is cheaper or, that does a better job than yours, or a substitute, a product that is similar, and, the customer leaves. So there are really a number of things to balance to make everything work. Yeah. But I think the last focus, the strongest focus has to be on the customer.
Yeah. Can I ask, are you a fan of Elon Musk?
What an interesting question. I don't know. I have to be honest. I don't know. Okay. I follow him like I think the rest of the globe does. Maybe yes and maybe no. There are some things where I really admire him when I look at his story and I think, wow, this guy managed to do quite some things. Huh? But there are some decisions that I don't share or I don't agree with. So, I can't say.
Gotcha.
Are you? Yeah. Are you a fan of Elon Musk?
I am. I would say I am. I think, like you mentioned, Henry Ford and kind of democratizing access to cars, and exactly. I feel like he's a very similar figure in a lot of the things that he's doing. But it's interesting because so many people, especially people in tech, are not a fan of him. I know he does some. I think one of the things I like about him is the fact that he's. He'll tweet things that are kind of random, he's not, there's so many of these corporate CEO figures who you're not getting the real picture of them. You're getting a filtered version of them. So I like the fact, we're all a little weird, so I guess I like the fact that you see the unfiltered version of him. I feel like he's confident enough, to not care about anything. So he knows that whatever he's going to do, people are with him, against him, doesn't matter. He's going to do it anyway. So I think it's nice to be in that position. I don't think many people can afford to be in such a position. At least that's what I perceive from the outside. And But it's true, like what you were saying, that we get to see this, we don't get to see the real picture of, how things go. That's the exercise. I'm going back to do research. For Tilt, I started doing this column, the Archaeology of 0 to 1. Okay.
Did you see that? Basically, I take successful products, and I go back to their first years
Okay.
So I
Okay.
do research. I go on the web archive and I go and look at how the website was, what was the message.
Oh,
I
that's
do
so cool.
research to do like to see how they first advertise, how they got in touch with the users, because I feel like, especially with startup founders, like they feel that these companies are so far away from them, right? Especially early stage startups. And they
Oh yeah.
feel like they don't have the money that these companies have to
Yeah.
reach, some success. And
Yeah.
I started Archaeology because actually everyone started from somewhere,
Yeah.
including the most successful startups, the
It's
unicorns.
it's incredible. I mean, most of these companies weren't even around 10 years ago. I mean, I
Yeah,
saw a list recently of the companies that simply did not exist at all 10 years ago. And
yeah,
you look at their early versions of their websites and things like that, and you go, wow, like this is pretty surprising how fast things
yeah.
iterate.
Exactly, but there are some that have been there for quite some time, and they really worked hard to get what they were, which is also a good reminder to people not to give up too early when they feel like things are not working. So
Yeah.
the last one I did was Mailchimp. Mailchimp
Okay.
was started 20 years ago. I mean, there was no,
Really?
yes, I kid you not. There was no Facebook. They started in 2001. And to put things in perspective, Google started in 1998. So 2001, Google was still like trying
That's
to,
crazy.
there was no social media.
I had no idea. Yeah.
Yeah, if you want, like I can forward you the research. It's super interesting. And they bootstrapped,
Yeah.
no
Yeah.
investors. And
Yeah.
it's sweet because I found that, one of the founders said that actually they went all the way bootstrapping because they had no idea they could find investors. Because
They
back
just
then wasn't a thing, to
it
go for
wasn't a
the
thing.
yeah, so they just kept putting money in the company. But it's true, there are some that are really fast and some that
Hmm.
take more time, but that we all
Hmm.
started from somewhere and we all
Yeah.
went through our share of good and bad.
Yeah. And so the tilt framework, I know we talked about
Yeah,
the overarching idea of putting the human putting the
in the
tech in the loop, kind
center.
of human
Yeah,
centric product design and stuff like that.
yeah.
But is there a framework? Like, is there a step by step sort of a approach to breaking down product management problems and things like that?
It's more in product strategy than not
Okay.
product management. I find that product strategy is really the initial step. Then it goes sort of in the loop. But I think if you start already in the beginning to put things in perspective, considering the end user, that's something that we keep hearing a lot, right? So we always have to think about the end user. But I think if there is a framework to follow, for people would be a little bit easier, then they know,
Yeah.
okay, let's look at this step. What should I do right now?
Yeah.
And so I came up with the idea of the framework, and now the framework exists. I wrote a paper which is about to be published.
Oh, cool.
And I did not expect that. I have to be honest with you. I came up with the idea and then I submitted an abstract to a conference just to
Uh-huh.
check whether it was all in my head or
Uh-huh.
a sort of validation, if you
Yeah.
will, no? And it
Yeah.
got so much interest. I got contacted from so many people, by so many people. I got invited to give a keynote speech on the
No,
topic in another
nice.
conference. And
Are
suddenly
you gonna
that's
do it? Are you gonna do
I
the
did
keynote?
it. I did it.
Yeah. Oh, cool.
It's actually recorded, so it's online. And that's where the idea of the newsletter came from, because I had so
Okay.
many people reaching out that I thought I need to keep track of these people. In a bit, I'm going to forget all names, and so I was like, why not a newsletter? And so I started Tilt, the newsletter, but it wasn't really in my focus. So I grew very little because of all the speaking engagements I had, but I never really invested in it.
Hmm.
And there, it's like the newsletter is like human centricity and product strategy, and it's sort of curated content because I read a lot. I spend most of my day reading. So I'm like, okay, this could be interesting for the people that read the newsletter, so I choose the different bits. And then when I came up with the archaeology of 0 to 1, again, like I wasn't really sure. That was like, again, maybe it was all in my head.
That's a great title. That's a great title.
It's not, I have to say, I have to give to Caesar what belongs to Caesar. It's not mine. It wasn't somebody that read the first draft. The first breakdown that I did was Buzz Sumo. And somebody read it and it was like, you're turning into an archaeologist, the archaeologist of 0 to 1. And then somebody else said, brilliant name. And I was like, okay, I can take that. I like
That's
it.
Great. A lot of times it's like that with your early users. You just get feedback and ideas and incorporate them.
Amazing. Yeah. So that's what I did. I shared it in a group on Facebook that I'm part of, which is a very active group where we exchange like ideas, and the feedback was amazing. So I was like, maybe this is something people might like. And I started as a column. I was like, okay, let me put it in the newsletter as a column of Tilt. And let's see how people react. Let's ask for feedback, so the feedback were very positive. Almost no one unsubscribed. So I took it as a sign that it's people, still my open rate is really, really high. So I thought, okay. And now it's becoming more and more a focus for me because I truly enjoy it. I spend nights digging the internet, finding for old pictures, old scans. Cool. It's amazing for me because when I start, I never know where I'm going to end. And what I'm going to find. For example, I broke down Airbnb.
Okay.
And I reached a point and I said, I'm not going to publish this. I did the whole research, but in the end, what I found, I didn't like it. So I tried to...
Why didn't you like it?
So I try to find, learnings, things that can be easily repeated by everyone. An idea, something that, we can all do, that we don't necessarily need investors or tons of money. And what I found is that their CDO, at the very beginning, they were really in trouble. I can tell you, actually, I'm even thinking of sharing the research because the research is really good. They went through quite hard time in the beginning. So the idea was good. I don't know why they decided not to use social media. So Facebook was already strong, Twitter was already there, but they decided not to use social media to advertise. So they really had trouble to get in front of users. So their first years were really, really tough. The media online, so the papers, they were also hard on them because some of them were saying that they found a way, for serial killers and rapists, to have their victims in their home. I found really harsh articles, really, really hard.
Right.
So I might publish it one day because anyway, they did a great job. So their CDO had this brilliant idea, amazing, genius, really. But it cannot be repeated or unless you are a super technical person. So he hacked Craigslist. He created a backdoor in Craigslist because back then Craigslist was the most popular website where people would go to find, apartments, accommodations, or whatever. So he created a way to get the interest. So if a person was interested in a specific hotel or room, he would receive an email from Airbnb. Saying, maybe you'd be interested in Airbnb is a new website, and this is how they got like the first users.
Okay.
The story continues. Clearly, to become as famous as they are right now, they did a lot of other things, but this one was how they sort of cracked their way into the masses. And it cannot be repeated again unless you are a knocker. I wouldn't. I'm not a knocker, so I wouldn't be able to repeat
Yeah.
it, right? I wouldn't know how to do it.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
and that's the other thing. These companies have crazy, interesting stories.
Hmm.
All of them, like
Hmm.
super interesting.
Yeah. That sounds like it would be an interesting podcast too. I'm imagining like hearing you tell the stories because you're a great
Yeah.
storyteller, and
Am
it's
I? Thank you. Thank
yeah,
you.
yeah. You have a great voice, and I can imagine hearing these stories would be interesting. I actually used to I set up some email automation with Craigslist early on when I started doing freelance development stuff, and so I would automatically, it was a little spammy, but I would automatically, but it wasn't very spammy. I would search for keywords and
Yeah.
automatically email
The
people,
people. Mm.
the people that were posted, because there was a section on Craigslist for gigs,
Yeah.
computer gigs. So if they needed help with a website or something like that, and it was over time it got harder to do because they added more they like complicated checks and things
Yeah.
like that. But
Yeah.
there was a phase there where I was hacking Craigslist, I guess. Not really hacking, but
No, they did it. I mean, the way you did it, they did it a little bit more into, like, I mean, they were
uh-huh,
competitors, right? So,
uh-huh,
but I think your idea, I mean, in the end, these people were looking for help. So you were just
yeah,
scanning Craigslist.
yeah,
You were not
yeah,
really stealing possible like customers or whatever.
yeah,
So,
no, yeah,
but I don't,
exactly.
like, I don't judge. I think that was an amazing idea. I'm not saying whether it's legal or illegal. I'm saying that not everybody can repeat it, but I think that was genius. That
Hmm.
turned things around, and they needed that. They
Hmm.
absolutely needed that.
Right.
So yeah, I think their CDO was and still is, like, their third founder still is like a genius. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. That's interesting. I think I saw somewhere that Airbnbs are like more expensive than most hotels in many areas now.
Yeah.
Because the prices had just gone up and up, and everybody's so comfortable with Airbnb and things like that. That
Yeah.
isn't that kind of weird that it's
Well,
like
it
what?
is because it became a crazy business.
Yeah.
For the people that have an apartment. Like in Amsterdam, the government had to stop that. So Amsterdam, it's so touristy. There are like so many people going there, like at any time of the year, that
Mhm.
people that had an apartment, they would not rent it anymore permanently to anyone.
Mhm.
They would just put it on Airbnb because it was a lot more money.
Mhm.
But then what happened was that the people moving to Amsterdam for work could not find an apartment. Nobody
Oh, really?
wanted to rent
Because they
an
were all short
apartment.
term.
Yeah. So the
Mhm.
government introduced a law that an apartment cannot be rent for less than 30 days. And that was against Airbnb because it was really like creating huge problems.
Mhm.
It is a massive business, massive,
Mhm.
and
It
a
is.
great idea. No, so
Yeah.
why not? I have an apartment, it's empty. Why don't I make money
Yeah.
out of it?
Yeah.
No, it started like this sharing economy. Started with them. Now people share everything, everything
Yeah.
they have. They share it
Yeah.
for money.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
bicycle, like whatever.
Cars. There's this app I'm thinking about trying out to rent a Tesla, which is it's called Turo, and it's like Airbnb for cars, basically.
Okay. Yeah,
Um,
yeah. I think there
yeah.
is more and more of that, no? But
Yeah.
I think it's a good idea. Again, like, why
Yeah.
not?
Yeah. Yeah. It just makes sense. I mean, we have these resources that if we're not using them, and we can kind of maximize the utility of them for other people, it
Exactly.
kind of just makes sense. Um,
Yes.
yeah. Interesting. So I saw that I think I saw that you had tweeted something about something to the effect of like, I hope my students don't, or I don't know if my students follow me on Twitter, or
They
like,
don't. I
yeah,
I
like
check.
Like it's kind of it's like a separate space for you to kind of just
Yes, yes,
explore ideas
yes. The Twitter is the
and
place.
be maybe a little
Yes.
unfiltered, like we were talking about being filtered, unfiltered.
So I use a lot LinkedIn, from business perspective,
Yeah,
profession, and I have boundaries there. And
yeah.
I don't like Facebook, so I don't have. I have a Facebook account, but it's only for groups. So
So
it's
many
actually
people
a
just
fake.
use Facebook for groups.
Yeah,
It's
groups are
yeah,
amazing.
yeah,
You can get a lot out of it.
yeah,
But that's not something that is because of, Facebook is just the means. The
yeah,
groups are great because of the people that are in the groups.
yeah,
And for the rest, I really don't like it. And
yeah,
so I don't have Facebook. I like Instagram, but I just like because I'm a very visual person, so I like watching, looking at the pictures, but I'm not really. I tried, but for me it's not really natural to put like pictures of myself of the time, what I'm doing, what I'm not doing. So it doesn't
yeah,
really work for me as a social media.
yeah.
So I started Twitter, and I just want to be myself.
Mhm.
I know it's different when I teach. It's different
Yeah,
when I work. I'm a
yeah,
different person. I'm a
yeah,
combination of things.
yeah,
And I
yeah,
am
yeah,
not
yeah,
like, I
yeah,
don't
yeah.
take myself so seriously.
Right.
And I just wanted to have a
You're a
place where
person. You're a
yeah,
person. Yeah,
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 where I would just not feel judged by
yeah.
people I work with or students. Yeah, so Twitter is my safe space. Hopefully they'll
That's
never
cool.
find. I use my real name, so they might
Yeah,
find it actually.
yeah, 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 yeah. Um, I think that it's interesting. I think that like pseudonymous Twitter or like anonymous, pseudonymous profiles in general are something that I think will become more popular over time. Where you can use a profile and not have your identity linked to it and things like that.
Yeah.
Um, but it's tricky to set those up.
I mean, I understand that too. I like seeing people.
Yeah,
In the end, I like to associate a face to a person,
yeah,
maybe a voice. These are things that you can build in your
yeah,
mind, even if you don't talk directly to the person. But I have the
yeah,
feeling, for example, I've known you for years just because we chat on Twitter,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
And it's more difficult to do that when you don't know
yeah.
who's behind.
It is. It is.
Yeah.
Yeah. I tried setting up one of those pseudonymous accounts, and it was just weird. It was just yeah. I don't think people take you as seriously, and but it's a tricky problem to solve. I think because I think it's increasingly difficult to be that unfiltered version of yourself
Yeah.
online, and well, in some ways it is, some ways it isn't. Kind of depends, but I think that
Yeah. It
it
is.
might be.
I mean, it's a little bit more difficult because it's still online. So another thing I'm super passionate about, and that's where all the human centricity comes from, is it's psychology and
Uh huh.
the brain.
Uh huh.
So I in my spare time, that's what I do. I read articles and books about the brain, about the behavior, about the psychology, and we behave differently. Online, we behave
Uh,
differently. you know.
right.
And
Totally.
yes, and there are some parts of us that are the same. So that's I'm very much into persuasive technology.
Okay.
Even before Facebook sort of destroyed that for all of us. And in some parts, it's interesting because we do react to technology like we would normally react to a friend. So even
Okay.
though we know that our computer is a machine, is not a person, we still get influenced by
Hmm.
it.
Hmm.
But then when we join like social media, we tend to amplify. It's like another society. You always have to show the best of you. You always have to show how successful you are, how heavy everything is. It's like this pressure
Yeah.
that you always have to show that in your life everything works perfectly. And we
Yeah.
know it's not true. Even,
Yeah.
the most successful person doesn't have the
Yeah.
perfect life.
Yeah.
It's like another type of society. It's like when you are in person, you have this huge pressure that you have to be tall, thin, blonde, and blue eyes, So
Yeah.
it's also there, similar.
Especially in Switzerland.
In where?
Especially in Switzerland, tall and blonde and blue
They are
eyes.
all the ladies here are tall, blonde, blue eyes. They're super beautiful. I mean, it's tough. It's tough to
Yeah.
live here. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. It's true. It's yeah. I that's one of the reasons actually with this podcast. I had a podcast I did for a number of years where we talked about a specific e-commerce niche.
Mm-hmm.
And I still talk about that, and that's still a big part of my network. But, I would always be limiting myself to those topics and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's other, podcasts where people will just talk about a range of different things. And I like those as an end consumer.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, I guess I'll just do that too. And you can create clips and things like that to specific, topical types of clips. But yeah, I've been thinking a lot about what you were saying about just kind of being your whole self. And just kind of putting it out there,
I mean, in the end, we are. I mean, it's very difficult to find a person. Probably these are the person that are maybe, I don't know, I don't want to assume, but there are people that are very focused on something, right? Like whether it's their work and they live for that and that's what they read when in their time off, But most of us, we all have different facets. We're not just one thing.
Yeah.
And I agree with you that it becomes really difficult when you just have to make it about one specific topic.
Yeah.
So,
like I found that I would just start talking about like being a dad and kids and things like that randomly, and I'm realizing like almost every one of my guests is a dad, and we find ourselves talking about these things. And so I was just giving it a little more breathing room. And, somebody commented, they were like, oh, I came to this video expecting to learn more about this particular e-commerce thing. And I ended up like hugging my son and, telling him how much I love him and stuff. It was really sweet.
That's really sweet. Yes.
But we got to talk about Canva because I'm big. I love Canva. I use it, and you like are into it. I think you've written about it a lot and stuff. You've researched. Yeah,
it was part of the Archaeology of 0 to 1.
Okay.
Because Canva had this. Not long ago, they raised 200 million, and they were evaluated at 40 billion. Which makes them one of the fastest growing tech companies.
40 billion Canva?
Mm-hmm.
Wow, that's like 40 billion? That's high.
I know. It's one of the strongest, companies. So I was like, let me check how this is all started. Like I have to find out. So I started digging. I got lost, in the internet finding things.
How many hours total do you spend on these things when you do the archaeology and you're in the middle of the night digging away in web archives and stuff?
I don't know, hours, but I can tell you that it feels like minutes.
It's
like
just
I am
fun.
so into it. And at some point, I have to stop myself,
That's cool.
I'm like, no, okay, this is enough. Now I can wrap up. I found very interesting things. It's amazing. What makes me sometimes, it makes me also think of the fact that the internet never forgets.
Mm-hmm.
I'm able to find tweets of, like years ago. When I did BuzzSumo, I was able to find exactly the moment when Ron Fishkin found out about BuzzSumo, and became his best advocate, which was a tweet of like almost 10 years ago. The
That's
internet
so cool.
forgets nothing,
Yeah.
which is also a little bit scared, like maybe we should
Yes.
think what we put out there. If one day might regret that comment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, more and more people are starting to delete all their old Twitter, all their old tweets. They just delete them, archive them.
Yeah, but for me, if I continue
Yeah.
with the Archaeology 0 to 1, but it really makes me think a lot.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, that's what I did with Canva. I just went all the way back.
So what did you find with Canva?
Well, I found that they officially started Canva in 2012, but actually when everything started was in 2007.
Really?
So yeah, because the Melanie Perkins started, the first company they started was called Fusion Books.
Mm-hmm.
And they had put together this tool and to create yearbooks in an easy way.
Uh-huh. Mm-hmm.
So the idea was very good because they had a clear buyer persona, which was the universities.
Uh-huh.
And they were students back then. So they were insiders.
Yeah. Yeah.
So they put together like the tool, and then they basically went to each university. They didn't even have to, make the effort of being online, social media, or whatever. They would just show up at the university, find the person to talk to, and sell it as something that in 30 minutes anyone could build a yearbook, and it would be way cheaper than having the yearbook done by some professional.
Uh-huh.
And they went on with Fusion Books for 5 years. They were pretty successful in Australia, and then they wanted to expand. They started trying to expand to France and the UK. I'm not sure what happened. I mean, clearly they weren't massively successful because otherwise we would know about it.
Yeah.
And I think in Europe, we don't have yearbooks. Like, it's not a European thing as far as I know.
Uh-huh.
So probably that is why it didn't work. And then in 2012, they had the idea of, okay, let's take the tool, the technology behind Fusion Books, let's patent it. So they have a patent, and let's make it for everyone.
Okay.
So that's how they started. But at that point, things were not too bad because they had already a business thriving on this specific solution. So when I first went to see their website in the web archive, they had a page dedicated to their investors. So long. I mean, they were able to raise 3 million with no users.
Wow.
0.
And this was back in 2012?
2013 at that point.
Oh, okay.
And so I think the fact that they could prove that Fusion Books was already successful made it easier for them to convince people to give them money. And there is a lot that you can do with 3 million. There is a lot that you can do. But still, like they had to bring their idea in front of the users. So they worked a lot with partnerships. They partnered with bloggers, and then with designers, and then with photographers and illustrators. And that way they were able, especially with bloggers. Back then, bloggers had a lot, were a lot more prominent than right now. Right now, everybody has a blog. And that way they were able, because they didn't want to focus on Australia. They knew they wanted to go international straight away. Otherwise, it was going to be another Fusion Books. It made no sense. And partnerships allow them to do that, to get out of Australia. So it's, it's another, and that's again not an overnight success. I mean, 2007,
I had
2021.
No idea. If you would have asked me, I would have said Canva's been around for a few years.
No, but that's the way we perceive, right?
That's the way we perceive it. Yeah.
We perceive that these super successful companies, sort of were born successful.
Yeah.
No, but that's
what I love about Yeah, so I would say what I love about Canva, it feels like they just iterate quickly. Like I was using it pretty heavily, I want to say maybe a year ago, and then
Mm.
recently I started using it to make thumbnails and things like that. And it's just easy to use. It does the things that you could use Photoshop for, but it like removing backgrounds
Yeah,
and certain effects and things like that. But it gives you the ones that it takes kind of the most commonly used effects. It makes them easy to use. It gives you templates and things like that, so that if you're trying to
yeah,
design something, you're not looking at a blank canvas. So you
yeah.
can it makes it easy to get started. And I find the
I
things
think
that uh,
I think that they give a lot of. I think she's really strong. I think Melanie Perkins is the brain, the main drive behind Canva, and I think she has always been very, user oriented. So when she started Fusion Books, she started because she was a student, but she was teaching graphic design, to sort of make some money.
mm,
And she picked on how difficult Photoshop was to use.
uh-huh.
So I believe she is a good listener to people's problem,
Hmm.
because that's how she thought, why not making it easier? And I think that's how she continues to go. For example, now you can make landing page or websites directly in Canva.
You can make landing pages in Canva?
Yes, and it's amazing
Really?
because like you just tell them the URL you want,
Uh,
and then you build it yourself, and then it's there, out there.
wow.
And if you want to do it, I don't know, with WordPress, you have to find a host, a hosting service, then you have to build it yourself. I mean, Canva is much easier to use than
Yeah.
WordPress, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So, so I think she has really I mean, she's really good. Otherwise, come on, they wouldn't have made it to 40 billions evaluation, right?
That's
So she must
unbelievable.
be good at that.
Yeah. That's so crazy. I saw they added video editing somewhat recently, I want to say.
Mm,
And I haven't really used it yet, but I was planning to check it out at some point. Um,
yeah, yeah.
but
It's a very amazing tool.
it's just a great little product.
Yeah,
I use,
so
yeah,
easy, like really crazy, user
yeah,
friendly. Huh?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So
Cool.
needed because I mean, right now we are all, creating our own things online,
Yes,
and
yes.
Photoshop is a headache. Let's admit it,
It's
it's a
it's
headache.
horrible. Yeah,
Yes.
it really is.
Yeah.
I I was trying to do the thing where like you take somebody's like when I do the thumbnail for this video, I crop out your background,
Mm.
so it has a tool for that. And then there's this other effect that people will do where they'll put an outline around a person
Yeah.
in a thumbnail. And I just noticed that they have a new tool for that. I don't know if it's new, but it's new to me. There's a tool for that. Whereas before you had to copy and paste and change the color profile. You do some complicated stuff, but they just have
Yeah.
a real easy tool for it now. So
Yeah, it's really cool.
it's
I like
great.
it.
Yeah,
I like it a
yeah,
lot. Yeah.
yeah. Cool. Well, this was a lot of fun. Thanks again for taking some time.
Thank you. I love that.
It was good. Anything else you wanna share before we wrap up? Any links you want to share or anything like that?
Yeah, I can share the link to Tilt, if people are interested to sign up, for the Archaeology of Zero to One or for product strategy. I think that's where they can sign up. And then, they sign up on my website. So if they are curious to see what I do, they can just go around, have a look around.
Cool.
And my Twitter, if people, well, I guess you're going to share these on Twitter, so people will see my handle, so they can,
Yes.
very happy to connect with everyone. It's always good to make connections.
Cool. Awesome. Well, thank you very much. Thanks everybody for
Thank
tuning in,
you.
and we will see you soon.